being gay for some black people is literally considered a white thing. Like, you're hanging around too many white people. You need to stop talking to Joseph and text Jermaine. Well, what's up, rebels? My name's Willie. I am one half of Leo and Willie. We are engaged, we are queer, and we out here. What a controversial title. When I was creating it, I was like, needs a little bit more toxicity. It's a lot, I know, especially for an unfiltered, unscripted chat, but I love this series, so without further ado, let's get into it. Gay agenda, gay agenda. Gay agenda, gay agenda. If you haven't already, please do go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. Our goal is to get 15k before the end of the year. Right, enough of the self-promo, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Also, just want to say, if there's anything you want to add to this conversation, just go right ahead and pause me and just add to the conversation. I love reading your thoughts. It's the only way we're going to grow together, right? I recognise this is a controversial subject and a controversial title. One that I think would be extremely uncomfortable if delivered by another race. Immigrants, we get the job done. And I know some of you will lead straight to the comment section and be like, black is just a colour. It's not even something I can see, which is wild because I can definitely see my skin colour, so can racists. So I don't know who you're doing that for, but it's probably you. I said what I said. Black for me is culture, it's family, it's the infamous black nod, it's the smell of our hair products, food seasonings, and yeah, I generally just get a sense of family when I'm around black people, to be honest. I think some of that is rooted in the fact that for a lot of us, from our younger days, we are used to calling, you know, older family friends aunties and uncles. There's loads of kids that are around who are suddenly cousins, whether we are related or not. There's this huge push to be a family, which as a sidebar is interesting because the media, I would say, doesn't really push that narrative a lot. I think there's a lot of focus on the breakdown of the black family unit, right? The nuclear family, as to say, especially with the like absent father. We've all heard the jokes, hashtag where's your daddy? Black people tend to get it a lot, like your dad's gone, your dad's here. So I just find that interesting that family is a huge thing for us, but in the media, it's often presented as a breakdown of a family system. I think there's a lot of focus on gender roles in black family culture. Obviously understand that we aren't a monolith. There are different stories that exist within this culture where there's going to be outliers to everything that I say. A very positive example is, you know, my brother went with my fiance to go pick up my engagement ring, you know, so there are black queer couples who are flourishing and families that are absolute allies. So of course they do exist. This is not a self-hate towards my community. I love being black and I love my community very much. But there is no denying that there is absolutely a focus on gender roles within black culture. I grew up always watching my mum be the one to cook and bring my dad the food and then bring him a bowl to wash his hands. The Africanness of my family certainly exists in those gender binary roles. I was actually thinking this, my dad's since passed away and I don't think I would have come out until my dad passed away because I think the idea of me being queer would have been honestly just so ridiculous to him and it could have broken up our family unit. I don't think I've ever admitted that before, that's insane, but I'm only saying it because it's just me and you, it's just me and you. But yeah, in African culture, there isn't so much a push as it is the norm for men to be men and women to be women. And you know exactly what I mean when I say that. We could dissect it if we want to, but why waste time? We know what I mean. And then these men will go on to marry those women who will then go on to have children. And if you happen to give birth to a guy, he will, you know, do more labor focused tasks and the women will do more cleaning and cooking focused tasks. It's just continuation of that sort of strict gender binary role that is quite prevalent in a lot of African culture. And I actually think there's a crossover there to Asian culture, certainly South Asia. Feel free to chime in there if I'm wrong, but I definitely think there's a crossover there. So it's embedded in quite a few cultures. It's like your purpose is to make the guy's life as easy as possible by serving, feeding, etc. Now, I obviously don't subscribe to that culture. I think a lot of our generation don't, but I also don't judge people who do. It's a lot easier to judge a culture you're not part of. Growing up this way, I have a lot of respect for my family and other families who grew up with these strict systems, if it works for them, of course, even if it's completely not the way in which I choose to live my life now. I feel like because there's such a push for black men to be masculine within our cultures, in a way that some would even describe toxic. Therefore, being queer feels not only like letting go of that masculinity, but it's actually like subscribing to being feminine. It's a really backwards way of thinking, but it's quite honest. This is the best thing I can do. I can give you honest viewpoints, which you can go, well, that's not right. And that we know that. That's so easy to do, to say, well, I don't agree with it, that's not right. But when you're talking about different cultures, different things, and different ways of living, I think it's just too easy to go, this is right and this is wrong, as opposed to this is just what happens here. You can learn from it and we can conversate from there. But yeah, absolutely. In some cultures, unfortunately, Black men being gay is equated to instant feminization. Like, this is erasure of masculinity. You know, men sleep with women, and if you aren't doing that, where's your daddy? Insert the jokes again, but that's really where it comes from. It's this idea that you don't have a stable home life, your dad's not there, and that's why you are being with men. I think it's backwards thinking for sure. But I think it's really important that I say it unfiltered so we can really talk about it. Like, let's get a bit uncomfortable. It's the only way something exciting happens. Nothing happened that was good in comfort. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's get a bit uncomfy. I think it's stupid that some people think that having a father in your life can make you straight. You know, like back in the days when they did conversion therapy with like electrocuting people whenever they saw like images of things that would normally turn them on. You know how that didn't work? Maybe it would have if the fathers were present. Say it out loud and you realise it's so stupid. Being gay for some Black people is literally considered a white thing. Like, you're hanging around too many white people. You need to stop talking to Joseph and text Jermaine. I think media has a big part to play in this. I recognise it's changing, but certainly growing up as a 90s kid, I saw so many white gay stories. And you're probably thinking, what's a white gay story? It's just a gay story. Sure. We know what we're discussing here, so I think it's really important for me to introduce the colour. I am not subscribing to this idea that we shouldn't see colour. What the hell? Sometimes for people like myself, being Black is an awesome thing. So I would quite like you to recognize who I am and understand that Black isn't a slur, Black isn't offensive, even if the media tries to make it so. I'm Black and I love it. So yeah, white gay stories and Black gay stories. It would be like this white person would be a hero amongst their queerness, and on the extreme other end, gay was being used as a slur for the least athletic in a Black story. So if you choose to consume media of people who look like you, emulate your lifestyle, which of course is important, representation in media is incredibly important. So that's not an issue. We're going to watch Black people in movies. Unfortunately, it's also going to include homophobia, which is so incredibly normalized in Black media. I don't know how many of you watch Black movies. There's a whole, subcategory of movies called Black movies. It's a whole thing. But yeah, homophobia is very rampant in that. I don't know why we don't discuss it more. It's a lot. Someone put on a song. I don't know if I'm going to have to do the rest of the video with this tune. Back to what I was saying. Basically trying to say that it's more common to see homophobic language used in Black media. And based on the fact that we consume so much of this media, it does make sense as to why it's commonplace that this language is just used so casually in Black cultures. The music's still playing, by the way. Media is so important. I don't think people realize how much of it we consume and how much of that consumption formulates and manipulates how we think. I took the liberty of checking, by the way. This area is obviously based on the UK, mainly because we've lost some of our UK followers. I don't know why. So this is me basically just trying to get you back with a graph. Hey friends. Looking at this graph on the screen, this is based on the UK. Obviously we have 2025 and 2026. These are calculated estimations based on a pattern of behaviour that we have already shown. And I'm not saying that in the 6.5 hours of media that Black British people are consuming, that they're just watching this homophobic, transphobic stuff. I'm just saying that growing up, I certainly watched a lot of stuff that was just like, it was just commonplace to hear homophobic language. Even before I knew I was gay, even before I really knew what gay was, I knew that gay may be bad. And that's a problem, and I was a late bloomer as well. and I grew up thinking that gay was a secret. Gay wasn't something people spoke about. Gay wasn't a good thing. It wasn't something we wanted to be, because again, it's always used as a slur. It's always used derogatory as, oh, you're gay. Like, if you think about the language, yeah, it's said really casually, and don't get me wrong, I say it to Leah sometimes too, oh, you're gay. But it does carry those heavy sort of like connotations sometimes, where it's like, it is still being used in a derogatory way, in which case we are demonizing the word gay, and that's quite heavy. And I don't think when people are saying gay, they're thinking, oh, the culture, the history. I don't think so. But it just perpetuates this narrative that gay is a bad thing. That's all I'm saying. Media also just isn't TV, right? It's live performances. There are different arts. There's different mediums of media. For me personally, I was thinking about this. When I was 6 years old, I watched The Color Purple, the movie with Oprah and Whoopi Goldberg. And that was the first time I'd ever seen two black women kiss. And like, on the TV. It's the first time I've ever seen it. I was 6 years old at the time. And don't tell, this wasn't a positive, lovely story. It's like rooted in colorism and it's awful. But that's the first time I ever saw that. And then at the age of 23, I was working in the theatre industry at this point, and I was, we were representing the rights of the show, The Colour Purple, full 60. And it was the first time I'd watched a musical on stage, and it was the first time I'd ever seen two women kiss on stage before. And I was 23 years old, and it was 6 and 23, and it was both The Colour Purple. And it shows you the fact that I can use the same examples across a span of, quick maths, can I do 17 years. One movie across 17 years, just different adaptations of it as my source of, this was my first look into queerness, and it wasn't even like the most positive story. I think that's just like one example. Obviously I'm not a monolith, but it's just an example of how little positive media we see about black people with like queerness. Like, we don't see positive black stories. We see some. I'm not saying that there isn't any. Of course you could name some. I'm just saying it's disproportionately unequal to what you would see with white people. To be honest with you, it's completely different, and that adds up. That definitely adds up. That creates something. I think it does something to the psyche. I think if you're consistently seeing negativity and you're consistently seeing a sexuality being laughed at, it's going to do something to your psyche. You're going to associate that with a bad thing. All right, let's talk a little bit about religion. I want to preface this by saying both Leo and I both have like religious family members and stuff like that. We have a history of religion, but we're not religious ourselves. Maybe it's because I was brought up in religion that there isn't a single part of me that hates religion. I hate people who use religion in a bad way, but I don't hate religion. I don't have a negative feeling towards people who are religious. I hope this is a safe space for religious people. Listen, me and Sky Daddy, we used to be like that. We were boys. I guess what I'm trying to say is I truly do hope you are emboldened in your faith. If that's what you choose to believe in. I don't have an issue with that. Fun fact, Black Americans are more religious than the entire US population as a whole. Religion is a huge in black culture, huge. And again, there are always going to be outliers. So if you're black and you're not religious, I see you. Okay, so we obviously know that there are some chapters in the Bible that aren't so LGBT friendly. Me personally, I think it's all very hypocritical. I think people pick and choose which sin to quantify and which one's the worst. You know, they'll be like, don't be queer, typing from like tattooed arms and cotton clothes, blasphemous. It's all in the Bible as a sin, do you know what I mean? Blasphemous. But for some bizarre reason, the sexuality thing seems to be something that actually a lot of religions agree upon as being unholy and against God's wishes, against God's wills. And so if you are someone who is quite rooted in religion, which a lot of black people are, then it does make sense why that would then streamline to a lot of black people being homophobic. This goes completely against what my Bible says and what my God says, so it's not for me. I ain't with it. I'm out. Being quite blunt in the language that I use, because if you are on the other end and you are black watching this but not queer, I want to speak to you like directly. And we know that within our culture we're quite blunt. We just say shit how it is, and so I'm not trying to pretty it up or make things poetical. We know what it is. We know what the nuances is. We know what the comments are. You know, I'm black. I've heard all of it growing up. I just think it's good to have an open, honest conversation. It's the only way we're going to combat it, because it is an issue. It might not be an issue for those who aren't affected by this, but it's certainly an issue for those who are. You know what I mean? Like, I have an issue with it. Like I said, I postponed my coming out until my dad died. What the fuck is that about? Religion is definitely a big foundation for a lot of black families. You know, praying together, praising together, which is like singing songs for God and just feeling that spiritual connection, which as a complete sidebar, yo, gospel music slaps. Look. Hear me out, boy. Yeah. I just love it. Yeah, with so many black people using, you know, religion as the center of their moral codes, social codes, how they raise their families, it makes sense why that would streamline into more black people being homophobic, because they are following that religious code, which says, you know, you shouldn't be gay. I was religious. I personally struggled with using the Bible as my source of like moral code, or like my source of inspiration or whatever. It feels so outdated, written in a very like patriarchal society, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but that's just my experience when I was religious. Even I just found that it was very like Chinese whispers, you know. I don't know if Chinese whispers is a thing worldwide, but Chinese whispers is like that game where you whisper like something in someone's ear. So I could whisper into like someone's ear, I love you, and then they whisper into someone else's ear, I love you, and your hope is that by the end of it, the last person still gets the phrase the same, but because of like how things get lost interpretation, by the end of it, someone could be like, I want to go to the zoo, and you're like, I didn't say that. That's how I think religion has, I don't mean to compare religion to a fucking child's game, but I'm just saying I think it does have very similar ways of spreading the word. You know, you're kind of hoping that a billion years ago, when someone started this Chinese whispers game, that they still mean the same thing that your ears are getting now. And I'm like, based on the fact that there's so many different translations, language translations, have you ever tried to Google translate a phrase and then reverse it? Those words aren't the same. Things get lost in translation. Words mean different things. Words are easier fit here, and I just do not believe that whatever was once said here, if that's true, is exactly what they mean now. And I don't think it's applicable to the world now, because we as a society have evolved, you know. We have different needs, different wants, and we have different law systems that, you know, weren't about back then. So I don't know, that's just me, you know, for the sake of having a somewhat open religious conversation for those who are religious and are going to watch this. That's where I struggle with the Bible per se. And so I don't enjoy the idea of giving the Bible that much power, especially if not every single thing in that Bible is going to be given the same amount of power. Like, let's keep it equal, do you know what I mean? Like, don't wear cotton, fine. Make sure you don't do everything the Bible doesn't say. And then if you still say at the top of that, I also don't believe in like this, as long as you're not being a cunt, fair enough. You know what I mean? Like, you're using that moral code and you're using it fairly across the board. But when you're picking and choosing and you're quantifying which one's a sin, then you're playing God. And I believe that's blasphemous. I do think generationally, the narratives are shifting. That always happens, right? You kind of hope that's the case, that the younger generation are always going to change something. And I guess with that generational change, we are definitely seeing more positive queer black people. I would like to name one, if that's okay. I would like to name Karomo from, some of you might know him as Queer Eye. For me, I'm obsessed. Me and Leo, we watch his show every day. And he's an icon, he's a queer icon. I think seeing him talk about issues that aren't just related to queer things, but just black people in general, things that actually haunt our community, communication things, mental health, things that we don't necessarily talk about as much. I think he's helping to bridge a gap between those conversations. I think he's starting a conversation. I love reading comments in people's videos, and so I'll read all of them, and linguistically, and also you just get the feeling. I know most of the people in the comment sections are black. They're one of me, one of me. I love that. I love seeing the amount of people responding to his work, because I even saw a comment where someone said, I had no idea he was gay, and I just found that hilarious, because he is gay, sis. Come on, girl. But like, it was cool, because I'm like, that's such a big thing in our community. You're watching him, you're consuming him, you're loving his content, and his sexuality is so relevant. And I think that's important. I think people like black POC queer content creators, Kat Black, Lorraine, Quen Blackwell, Corey Will, myself, you know, no matter how big or small it is, just seeing black people exist on the internet is helping bridge that gap. Black queer people exist on the internet, showing you our love is just love. It's normal. There's nothing special going on here, darlings. Like, we're just normal people. We're just normal men. I think me just existing is obviously challenging this narrative that all black people are transphobic or homophobic, or that there aren't black queer people and it's a white thing. Clearly not, because the last I checked. And for those of you who say you don't see skin colour, open your eyes. I'm black and I'm queer, and it's important for me to be black and a queer on the internet. I'm challenging narratives, and that's why I like my colour and like mentioning my colour. I think it's stupid to pretend it doesn't exist. I would genuinely love to do talks like this in predominantly POC spaces. I think it's important. I think it's not my responsibility, it's not anyone's responsibility who's, you know, black and queer, to educate people around us. You know, education for the most part, can be free. You know, that we are living in a generation where like we have most access to education as possible. And like, of course, I am still talking about the Western world. You know, we have education is at our fingertips, literally. And so it's not our responsibility to do that. But I also think me being me, you come on this internet, you see me, I'm black, I'm queer, sure, but I'm also confusingly charismatic. You kind of fancy me, you think I'm hot, what? There's a lot to me. And I think having those different layers and being a funny person existing on the internet or a silly person existing on the internet, it's showing you that queer isn't just my identity. I talk about queer subjects a lot because as a black person, I recognize that it isn't spoken about enough in my community. I want to be a change of that. I want to be part of that conversation. I want to challenge that. And that's why I speak about it. And I think it's important because there wasn't enough representation for me growing up. But guess what? I'm going to be there when someone else is growing up. Hey, baby, it's your auntie. I want to say in terms of homophobia and transphobia, I do think if you're a hateful person, a lot of the time it goes hand in hand. It's just gay shit, right? That's what it is. And I know I'm saying it in a way that's like, I beg your pardon, but I'm not. I'm saying it and I'm using the language that I absolutely know is attributed to some members of my community. I know this is the way we speak about it in closed doors. And I think it's important for me to introduce that language here so we can have real open conversations. I need you to hear me. I need you to understand me. I need us to be on the same linguistic level. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to be able to speak to people as well as the queer people who are white, who are watching this. I need to speak to my people who are black, who are not from the community, who are like, the fuck is this? I want to talk to you too. Like, I personally feel like there are way more issues that we should be focusing on, like, you know, systematic racism on every level, judicial, educational, literally every single level. I think instead of worrying about who your bro is fucking, you should be worrying about the fact you and your bro are 9 times more likely to get stopped by the police. I think that's a bigger issue, but that's just me. That's just me. I think it's a massive issue that we have some of the highest incarceration rates, some of the longest sentences, but some of the most pettiest crimes. I think we should be focused on the things that actually matter. Who someone chooses to love is not relevant to you unless you are poly, open, and wanting to all fuck. Do you know what I mean? And I just want to say, because I know this is a controversial conversation, I'm hoping to not rub any religious people, any of my black community, any of the LGBTQ wrong way, but also if I do, sure. Do you know what I mean? I'm also open to that. If I have a conversation just trying to make everybody happy, I probably should never have a conversation because I'm never going to do that. I think all I can do is be honest, and these are my true thoughts. I think that black people, are we more homophobic? Yes, we are. We absolutely are more homophobic. Are we just homophobic? Can you just say black people are homophobic? No, that's not right. Of course it's not. As long as you can find literally one person who doesn't, it makes that statement completely false, right? But I could say, in my personal opinion, that black people are definitely more homophobic than white people for all the reasons listed, religion, our media, the way we speak to each other, femininity, masculinity, the idea of raising a family, the nuclear family that we're trying to have, the idea of like, you know, just raising babies and being the strong man and the strong woman and how gender and sexuality gets mixed up a lot of the ways. And so I think it's worth discussing. I think I've given you a lot of talking points here. That's my point with these unscripted things. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm just trying to have a conversation, do you know what I mean? I think of something, I say, let's talk about it. Me and Lou are also thinking about doing a podcast called Let's Talk About It. So let us know in the comments below if that's something you think about. Where we just have conversations about things that feel a little bit, but are a little bit awkward and like no one really wants to have them because they are a little bit sticky, but they are real issues. Do you know what I mean? Like, my hope is that when creating this, we have a conversation that hopefully isn't just led by white people, but that's not to say that if you are white and you want to say something that you shouldn't. This is a conversation that we should all be having because it affects everyone. If you are queer, you know what I mean? It's not like if a black person's homophobic, they're only going for black queer people. They're going for everyone. So it obviously affects queer people. So please do say your thoughts here. I just want to say that to my extended family, I consider black people my family. It really does hurt. You know what I mean? You're hurting other people. We are all of the same. We have so much oppression, it sucks. And there's just so much to deal with for us to self-police and self-oppress ourselves. I think it's just, we're doing too much. You know, we say black on black violence isn't good. And when we say that, we talk about knife crime, gang crime, but I also think there's other ways for black and black violence. There's mental black and black violence, there's societal black and black violence. There's how we police each other, these standards that we give ourselves that no other culture, no other race has, that we have to police ourselves to. And it's like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Just live and let live. That's my philosophy anyway. I would love to hear yours. Thank you so much for watching. Please go subscribe, like, and all that good stuff. Drink water, eat fruits. I love you very much. Mwah, mwah.